Chance to a special podcast today on thehannibaltv.com. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and I'm pleased to have on today a man who is known as the Croatian Sensation, a UFC Hall of Famer, welterweight champion, the first welterweight champion, and the developer of the Miletich fight systems, the one, the only, Pat Miletich. Pat, thanks for coming on today, sir.
Thank you for having me, Jack.
Wanted to start off by asking, when we get into the big fight upcoming October 14th, we'll get into some of those details. But before that, I've heard you on podcasts as of late talking about the immigrant mentality and the relationship to the success many MMA athletes have experienced outside of the USA. And I think that would be very informative for the Hannibal TV fans to hear that from you.
Yeah, I mean, my family's from Croatia originally, and that's something that Croatians pretty much everywhere I've gone are always very proud of. That it's a very small, part of Yugoslavia, Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Macedonia, those places over there, and folks are pretty proud of their bloodlines from that region of the world. And Croatia is only 4 million people, but yet they're many times the only country that can compete with the USA in basketball in the Olympics and winning gold medals in other events, like water polo, things like that. So it's a unique location in the world, I guess, is the best way to put it. But I was taught to have work ethic, earn everything that you get in life. And years ago, the other side of it, that flip coin was, years ago we started seeing on the news and the programming that they were sending out to Americans a long time ago was, immigrants doing the jobs Americans don't want to do. And I knew that was a bad sign. And they've kind of programmed Americans to think that they're above manual labor. All the things that I grew up doing was, bagging groceries, roofing houses, landscaping, digging ditches. I mean, I did all everything you can imagine. And so I think the minute Americans start thinking that they're above that sort of work, we might be in a little bit of trouble. And fast forward to today, we can see that, a lot of employers can't even find people to work, that they've been financially incentivized to stay home, or just it's kind of been bred out of Americans to be soft and just not go out and get jobs, I guess, to do the work. And so here we are, right?
Exactly. You spoke many times in the past about your struggle as a pioneer with mixed martial arts to make the UFC a mainstream entity in light of the political pressure and interference that you encountered. I'm curious as to, now that the UFC is a global multi-million-dollar empire, so to speak, what your thoughts are in terms of how that played out, and specifically in terms of the compensation that most fighters receive or do not receive.
Well, I mean, it was definitely a rough road for quite a while, doing debates with politicians, televised debates, and pointing out that it really came down to their desire to control and make money off of a sport. They had no concern for the safety of the athletes, really, is what it really came down to. And they, during those debates, they did come down to the money and the control. And we knew that it would probably take somebody like the Fertittas to come along with an awful lot of money and an awful lot of power to push the sport over the top. And I mean, they're doing shows every week now all over the planet. And, they have merged with the WWE. They're a massive entity, but it's easy to have unions in professional sports where there's teams, and the teams are writing checks to their players. It's a totally different thing when you have independent contractors who are working for promotions, and it's difficult to do that. And I've also always seen mixed martial arts as probably the most capitalistic sport in the world. You know, guys that dedicate 100% champions have no intention of needing nor sharing at any point in their career, uh, the benefits that they've earned, so to speak, right? And that mentality of in there, at no point in their existence do you deserve any piece of their comp.
Mm-hmm. Pat will be back. Appears to be losing signal.
I don't understand why that.
Okay, we
Hello?
lost video. Hi, Pat. We lost video,
Hello?
but hi there. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I pulled the video down just so that I could at least hopefully get through the audio.
Fair enough. We'll proceed then. This would be a good moment to take a minute to shout out your friend, my broadcast partner on the Old School Shooters program, the King of Connecticut, who is working with Bobby Kennedy Jr. and will be accompanying Bobby at an upcoming UFC event. And he wanted to ask me, in addition to offering an RIP for Laurent, teammate, college, and solid ultramarathon athlete, introduce Laurent to you for the Elman's apparel line. Wanted to get your thoughts on his passing, as well as the King mentioned that you would be working with Jake Shannon on weaponized wrestling camps. Just a couple of comments along those lines, please.
I didn't hear the first part of your question, but I'm excited to work with Jake. He's obviously done amazing work with in all those camps, so I'm excited to help out with those. I really enjoy teaching others, so that's something that I'm excited about doing. I did not hear the clothing apparel question though at the beginning.
Sorry, I'll restate that. The King wanted to say R.I.P. Laurent Panchaud, a teammate in college and a solid ultra marathon athlete. He says he introduced Laurent to you for the Elman's apparel line.
He introduced who to me? I'm sorry. I apologize because I've got signal here and I don't know what's going on with.
That's okay. It's live. No problem. We'll keep rolling. He said, R.I.P. Laurent Planchard, a teammate in college and a solid ultra marathon athlete. He introduced Laurent to you for the Elman's apparel line.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I've got a lot of friends that do ultra marathons, and those guys that's the only thing I'll say is those guys are half crazy, yet they're also probably the kindest people in the world. They all want to see you finish, and it's not a dog eat dog world in ultra marathons. Those folks are very helpful when it comes to just assisting other people and learning how to do that, run those extreme distances and finish races.
Absolutely. Dan Gable is a fellow Iowa State legend that has several numerous accomplishments in terms of wrestling, and the fans would be interested in your thoughts on that man's legacy.
Well, I mean, my whole life growing up as a kid, that's the one athlete that I actually did look up to. I really wasn't somebody that looked up to necessarily any professional athletes or anything like that. While I admired them, I didn't idolize them. But Dan Gable was definitely a guy that was very unique in the world. And I read every book that was written about him and watched every documentary. And really, his work ethic was what kind of fueled my mindset. Really, to be honest with you, I think every kid growing up wrestling in the Midwest or in the country that learned anything about Dan Gable wanted to be, as close to him as they could.
In terms of the other aspect, before we switch to the matter at hand, you've had tremendous success as a coach MMA, and I just wanted to throw out a couple of names and get your impressions in terms of experience coaching them, starting with Tim Sylvia.
Definitely an overachiever. He was, obviously a very big guy. I think he grew about a foot or more after he graduated high school, and
Wow,
which is incredible to grow an entire foot after graduating. But I think he went from 5'8" to 6'8" in a few years. But a guy that had great work ethic, wouldn't give up no matter how tough of a time he was having, and really, I mean, if Tim Sylvia can win a world title, really, anybody can. To be honest with you.
Of course, Matt Hughes.
A guy that was probably the pound for pound one of the strongest people I've ever, dealt with, and did for obviously over a decade in the training room. Very driven, and just not a guy that he not only loved to win, but he absolutely despised losing, and you could see that in his training.
Robbie Lawler.
Like a little brother, came to me when he was 16, brought to me actually by a wrestling coach from Bettendorf. And we knew Robbie was going to be a world champ eventually. It was just a matter of time.
One of the fans on social media wanted the question to be asked, notwithstanding all your accomplishments in terms of mixed martial arts, etc., but wanted to know if you had much street fighting experience per se, and would that be considered an asset or a liability when one enters the octagon on a organized basis, so to speak?
Well, before I got into MMA, I was doing, and early years, I guess, of MMA, I was doing security work at nightclubs, things like that. So I had to have my share of situations on the street. So I think any experience in combatives is always going to be good, whether it's a street fight, a grappling tournament, a kickboxing match, or MMA fight. It's all experience, right?
Fair enough. Another fan question was, can we get your thoughts on Tank Abbott?
Tank was an anomaly, a unique guy that came into the sport very early on, and I think a lot of people could associate, I guess, and connect with him because he was not chiseled out of stone. He was that big beer-bellied guy that went out and wrecked people, and there's a lot of guys in America that that could probably, I think just picture themselves doing the same thing. So I'm sure, because of that, had a huge fan base.
Now, the topic that's on all mixed martial art fans in the country and around the world is this fight that's upcoming October 14th in Davenport, Iowa, against former CM Punk opponent Mike the Truth Jackson. This is a fully sanctioned event under the Aggression grudge match promotion, your promotion, I understand. Can we ask what, I know you fought in single discipline since then, such as kickboxing, but what was the rationale that you decided to step back in to the MMA arena, so to speak, after not doing so since 2008?
Well, Mike Jackson and I were friends. I cornered him actually in that fight against CM Punk. And when all the riots started in 2020 and all of the craziness, Mike Jackson started taking a very extreme stance on race and saying some pretty harsh things about people who just had different skin pigments. And I kind of, questioned him, that this really wasn't in his character that I had noticed before, and why he was reacting this way, and that I didn't agree. While the groups that he was supporting had legitimate concerns, burning your neighbor's businesses is obviously not the solution. And he took exception to that as well. And then when I went to Washington, D.C., just stood there, I didn't do anything illegal, anything like that, and decided to write an article about me. And the headline that he wrote on it was Pat Miletich supports domestic terrorism and white supremacy, and ultimately cost me a broadcasting job. And I mean, it was an attempt at character assassination and financial attack on me. And so I don't understand that way of thinking that anybody would try to do that. Wake up in the morning and intend to destroy another human being's life just because you have differences in opinion. But it affected me pretty severely, and I told him that I would like to have a closer discussion with him because of what he'd done. And he basically said that he would walk the dog with my old ass. And I said, well, then we should probably make a date. And, his thinking, he's in his 30s, that fighting a guy in his 50s is going to be pretty easy, whatever his thinking is. But ultimately, I think more so just the last 3.5 years or more that we as a society in this country and world actually have dealt with, cancel culture en masse. You do what we say or you'll lose your job. You'll need to leave the U.S. military if you don't take an experimental treatment, and all the things that have gone with it. People losing their businesses, their jobs, losing loved ones for a myriad of reasons during the last 3.5 years. That I experienced it personally, and so I feel for all the people out there because I've been through it, and I think at some point, citizens definitely need to take more of a stance of just absolutely not accepting any kind of mandates or orders that are not only unconstitutional but inhumane and destructive to our nation's economy and monetary system and mental health, spiritual health, all the above. And so that's why this is taking place. And honestly, this is something where I feel that people need to take a stronger stance on what's going on in this country and do our best to unite with other citizens. But at some point, you've got to stand up for yourself and your loved ones when it comes to everything that's been happening.
King is posing a question that kind of flashed through my mind. Do you think Jackson was purposely creating attention to get a high profile fight with a UFC legend that he probably wouldn't get otherwise?
No, I don't. I really don't. I don't think that was it at all. I think that he through the emotional programming that the media has been using, I think that he bid on it lock, stock, and barrel, and that decided that anyone who disagreed with him was, a white supremacist or a Nazi or whatever. He called Jake Shields a Nazi, and that's, I think, his programming. And a lot of people have been programmed to think a certain way, and that's sad and it's unfortunate because it's dividing the nation and it's costing us more than I think people recognize at this point. So I think he was just being himself at that point. He had been programmed and he was running with it.
You mentioned that you cornered him in the fight against Punk. What are your thoughts on him being unable to finish the first fight?
Well, I think at some point he recognized that CM Punk was not a threat to him, which Phil's obviously a great guy. I've talked to him a little bit, not a whole lot, but he's a good human being. He's not an MMA fighter. He's not exceedingly athletic or powerful or fast or anything like that. He's just not a fighter in any way, shape, or form. And I think that Mike recognized that at some point in the fight and maybe backed off a little bit. But that's kind of the way that from my perspective, I saw it all happening.
what overall, notwithstanding the quality of Mr. Brooks' character, what do you think globally in terms of pro wrestlers transitioning or making a segue? I know King doesn't exactly see it this way, but getting involved in MMA. What do you think of that phenomenon and Punk's attempt in particular?
Look, I think it's great for both sports, and of course, longevity in the sport of mixed martial arts is going to depend on that pro wrestler's background and his ability to, learn the, the applications of MMA, all the tools needed, and the endurance and everything else. I mean, pro wrestlers are some of the greatest athletes in the world, and I think that many are capable of doing it. Brock Lesnar, proved that, and others, I'm sure, will as well in the future. So it just comes down to, I think, each individual.
One fan question that has come up several times is from Richie Hodgkins. In terms of what is your opinion on the merger with WWE and TKO UFC in light of all of the personnel cuts? Yesterday was a huge news day that we covered here on the Hannibal TV in terms of multiple talents released. The prior Friday of last week, over 100 office personnel were gone. What are your thoughts in terms of the future for both companies and the impact on MMA, if any, in general?
Well, I think that says, monopolies aren't always a great thing. Competition is incredible. That's what the American economy is about. And that fans out there should do their best to support smaller organizations and encourage, competition between companies, and that's important. But monopolies generally have shown in any industry to really not be good for employees or customers.
Mm-hmm. So before we wrap this up, Pat, I know you're a very busy man and appreciate your time this afternoon. What is your strategy going to be in terms of this fight that will give the fans the details and how to order, etc., prior to wrapping up? But there's got to be a huge degree of personal animosity and hostility there. Again, Jackson has raised the fact that you're in your 50s, but have tremendous cardio. I understand your training camp has been phenomenal. What will be your strategy moving into that fight to separate that clear, as I said, personal animosity from what you need to do to defeat this man?
Well, I mean, if I was in my 20s, 30s, or 40s, the fight wouldn't even be considered, obviously. But I think I can win the fight any way that I want.
Are you approaching this given the fact that again you suffered financial losses, career related losses? Does this influence the way that you're going to approach it in any way at all, or is it another day in the office for a Hall of Famer?
Well, I mean, look, it obviously did cost me financially. It was a considerable impact on my life, and more so my children's lives, obviously. But I've lost the animosity, I've lost the anger, quite a while back. It's more about the cause that people just simply have to stand up for themselves at some point during all this craziness. And as far as the fight specifics, I know I can outbox him, I can outkick him, I can out wrestle him. He doesn't have ground skills, so I can win the fight pretty much any way I want. And I think that's for me to do. It's just a matter of going out and being smart and not being careless and taking, not taking him lightly just because, I'm, former world champion, things like that.
Well, this is definitely a fight that I am going to tune in for. How can the fans that are interested in seeing this event once again for the Cage Aggression promotion on October the 14th in Davenport, Iowa. Yourself against Mike the Truth Jackson. Where can the fans find this on iPay-per-view, pay-per-view, or any of those capacities?
Yeah, people can go and purchase the pay-per-view at cagedaggression.tv. It's a 2-night event, October 13th and 14th, Friday and Saturday. So 2 full nights of MMA for the price of 1, technically. So yeah, people can go to cagedaggression.tv, and we've been doing our own .com pay-per-views for probably 5 years now. After Access TV was purchased by Anthem, I decided to kind of have a discussion with some of my friends who were capable of the technical side of this thing and put that together. So we've got a little bit of experience doing it. And so yeah, cageaggression.tv, people can support it. And if they want to support him, great. If they want to support me, great too.
Well, Pat, I want to thank you again for your time today. But before I let you go, aside from the fight logistics that you just laid out, where can the fans find you on social media? And do you have, I know you're involved in a number of other business endeavors that you could illuminate for the fans right now before we let you go.
Yeah, obviously my focus has been, I launched a supplement line called Organic Super Soldier, or Super Soldier, that they can go to organicsupersoldier.com to get to increase oxygen at a cellular level and clean their cells out, chelate, synthetic chemicals and heavy metals out of their cells so that they operate better. We've come to the conclusion, it's pretty obvious, that human health is suffering from the impurities in our environment, the heavy metals and synthetic chemicals, and that's really, in my personal opinion, the origin of almost every human disease and sickness at this point, and destruction of our immune system. So people can address that. I feel that this is one of the products that is one of the best in the world at assisting in immune function and athletic performance and overall health. So people can go to organicsupersoldier.com for that. And then also I have been digging into and the world of biological agriculture and organic agriculture with products as well. So people can go to Soil Savior if they want a massive monster garden that's grown without chemicals. They can go to soilsavior.com and order that product as well and treat their gardens or their lawns with that. And then people can follow me on Instagram at PJ Miletich, and I'm on Facebook as well, just Pat Miletich.
Well, very much appreciate your time, Pat. Maybe after the fight, we can have you back on the HannibalTV.com for a retrospective of same, but definitely all the best. And we will be tuning in for sure. Thank you for coming on to this podcast this afternoon.
Thank you for having me on, Jack. And sorry about the screen, the video part of this. So.
No worries at all. We're just glad to get your input. Fans, thanks for tuning into this special podcast on the Hannibal TV. We will talk to you later.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest